All right, so today we're diving into man's search for meaning.
Yeah.
This book has had a huge impact on how people think about resilience and finding purpose, especially after tough times.
Oh, absolutely.
We've got all of our notes, highlights, and even some background on Viktor Frankl himself
hmm
and his concept of logotherapy.
It's a book that really stays with you.
Right.
Frankel's experiences in the Nazi camps were just horrific.
Yeah.
But what he really focuses on is how people still found meaning even in those conditions.
That's what I found so striking.
Yeah.
You'd think in a concentration camp, hope would be the first thing to go.
You would think that.
But for Frankl, it's almost like it was the opposite.
Yeah, it's like the harsher the situation,
Yeah.
the more crucial that inner strength became.
Right.
Frankl actually says the last of human freedoms to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way.
Wow.
Pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the stories of people surviving just incredible odds.
Yeah.
Was it just luck?
Right.
Or was there something more going on mentally that helped them hold on?
Frankl observed this in the camps.
Okay.
He saw 3 stages most prisoners went through.
Okay.
First was the shock of arriving.
Right.
Then something he calls apathy sets in.
Apathy.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't you expect just constant terror or despair in a place like that?
You would, and those were definitely there.
Right.
But Frankl realized that apathy, emotionally detaching a bit, actually helped people survive.
Interesting.
It was like a defense mechanism,
Okay.
conserving your mental and physical energy
Right, yeah.
when every bit of it was precious.
So it's not about giving up,
No,
more like strategically numbing yourself to get through it.
exactly.
Wow.
Frankl gives examples,
Yeah.
like how prisoners got so fixated on food,
Mm-hmm.
they dream about it constantly.
Really?
Or the delusion of reprieve,
Well,
even then facing selection for the gas chambers.
right.
Some people clung to hope.
It's like their minds were fighting to find any reason to keep going.
And that's where Frankel's idea of logotherapy comes in,
Okay.
is his school of psychology. And it's all about finding meaning as the driving force in life.
So not just pleasure or avoiding pain,
Right.
but a deeper sense of purpose.
That's it.
Okay.
That's why his famous quote,
Hmm.
"He who has a why to live for can bear with almost anyhow,"
Right.
is so spot on.
Powerful.
He saw it firsthand.
Yeah.
Frankl himself held on to the image of his wife
Okay.
and the goal of rewriting a manuscript he had lost.
Wow.
These things kept him going.
And what about the prisoner who died the very day he dreamed liberation would come?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's heartbreaking.
yeah, it's heartbreaking, but it shows how tied our hope and will to live are.
Absolutely. It also raises the question,
Yeah.
what about when we can't find that meaning?
Right.
What happens then?
That's got to be where the existential vacuum comes in, right?
Yeah.
It's like that feeling of emptiness,
Yes.
purposelessness. I've definitely felt that at times, and I haven't gone through anything remotely close to what Frankl did.
And that's Frankel's point.
Right.
This isn't just a concentration camp thing.
Yeah.
He saw it in society, too.
Okay.
Boredom, depression, aggression.
Mhm.
He ties them all back to this lack of meaning.
It's like we've traded physical suffering for this inner emptiness.
In a way, yeah.
So instead of starvation or torture, we're battling this feeling of like, what's it all for?
Especially in a world with so many distractions,
Right.
always trying to fill that void with stuff.
And it's not really working, is it?
It's a struggle.
That's why understanding Frankl's ideas about self-transcendence is so important.
I agree.
He's saying, look beyond yourself.
Yeah.
Find meaning in something bigger.
So it's less about what I get,
Right.
more about what I contribute.
That's a big shift
It is.
from how we usually think.
Exactly, and that's where responsibility comes in.
Okay.
Frankl said, man is not fully conditioned and determined, but rather determines himself whether he gives in to conditions or stands up to them.
Wow.
We're in charge of creating meaning,
Right.
not just finding it lying around.
That's where his example of the grieving man comes in.
Yeah.
The one whose wife had died.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of dwelling on the loss,
Right.
Frankl helped him find purpose in living a life that honored her memory.
It's beautiful.
It really is.
It's about taking that pain
Yeah.
and turning it into something that propels you forward,
Right.
something that keeps that person alive in a different way.
I'm already seeing how this applies to life outside of the camps.
Yeah.
But I have to ask. Some people might say, sure, this worked for Frankl in that extreme situation, but
Mhm.
how does it help me with everyday problems?
That's a fair point.
Yeah, it is.
But Frankl was adamant that logotherapy applies to all of human experience.
Right.
He saw this existential vacuum,
Hmm.
not as specific to the camps,
Yeah.
but as a fundamental challenge of modern life.
So it's not about the size of the problem,
Right.
but our approach to it.
Exactly.
Finding the meaning within it, that's really powerful.
And that's where his work really shines.
Right.
It's not just philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Frankl actually gives us tools to find meaning.
Okay.
He talks about creative work, experiencing beauty and love, and even our attitude towards unavoidable suffering.
There's a lot to unpack there, and I
Yeah.
feel like we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
Well, Frankl's observations about the psychology of the camps were so insightful.
Mm.
Let's dive into those next.
Okay.
I think you'll find they reveal a lot about human nature, even outside of such extreme situations.
Okay, deep divers, buckle up. We're going even deeper into Frankl's world.
One thing that really struck me was how the camp environment affected people's sense of self.
Yeah.
Frankl calls it cultural hibernation,
Okay.
where basically everything besides survival just lost its meaning.
It's like their minds had to shut down all non-essential functions
Right.
just to cope. Exactly.
I remember he gives that example
Yeah.
about craving a glimpse through a window in a warm building,
Mm-hmm.
something he wouldn't have thought twice about before.
And he was even mocked for it.
Right.
You know, told he must have seen enough already.
It's what?
It shows how distorted everything became,
Yeah.
even simple desires.
Right.
But it also points to this concept of relative deprivation,
Oh, wow.
how our idea of suffering really depends on what we're surrounded by.
Like the prisoners in the typhus ward,
Yeah,
envying those doing hard labor.
right.
Because at least they had the illusion of purpose,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a chance at extra rations.
Exactly.
It's crazy to think that even in Auschwitz,
Yeah,
there were levels of envy.
it really is.
Wow.
It shows how adaptable we are.
Right.
How our minds adjust to whatever situation we're in.
But it also raises questions
Yeah.
about how far that adaptation can go,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to morality.
That's right. Because Frankl also talks about how the struggle for survival,
Led to some pretty dark behavior.
people stealing from each other, betraying each other,
Yeah.
just to stay alive another day.
He calls it a moral regression,
Okay.
where self-preservation became the only rule that mattered.
Even Frankl himself wrestled with this.
He did.
Seeing people do things they never would have imagined
Right.
in their former lives.
It makes you think about those ethical dilemmas.
Yeah.
Like, would you steal food to feed your family
Right.
if it was the only way they'd survive?
It's easy to judge from the outside.
It is.
But in that situation, who knows what you would do?
Exactly. It
Yeah.
forces us to confront
Mm.
the darker sides of human nature
Yeah.
and how our values might shift under extreme pressure.
But even in those moments,
Yeah.
Frankl believed we still had a choice.
He did.
He talks about the inner hold,
Mm-hmm.
that space within us
Yeah.
where our thoughts and beliefs remain our own,
Yeah.
no matter what's happening externally.
So even when everything is stripped away,
Possessions freedom, even your sense of self. There's still this inner freedom that can't be touched.
that's what he's saying.
Wow.
And it's where we find true resilience.
Okay.
For Frankl, it was the love for his wife, the desire to finish his book.
Right.
Those inner goals gave him strength.
It's like those things existed on a different plane,
Yeah,
untouched by the horrors around him.
exactly. And it's incredible to think that humor even played a role in the camps.
I know.
Frankl talks about how prisoners would joke,
Yeah.
even about their own suffering.
It seems almost impossible
Even?
to find
Yeah.
something to laugh about in that situation.
But that's the power of the human spirit.
right.
Humor, like apathy, became a way to cope,
Okay.
to find moments of lightness in the darkness.
It's a reminder that even in the worst of times,
Mhm.
that spark of humanity,
Yeah,
that ability to connect and find joy,
yeah.
doesn't completely disappear.
It might get buried, but it's still there.
So in a way, it's like Frankl is saying that we always have a choice. Even when it feels like we don't,
Right.
we can choose how we respond to suffering.
Mm-hmm.
We can choose to hold on to our inner freedom.
Yeah.
And we can even choose to find humor in the midst of it all.
That's the key takeaway.
Okay.
Even though Frankl was writing about the concentration camps,
Right.
his observations about human nature are relevant to all of us.
I agree.
We all face
Uh-huh.
challenges.
Yeah.
We all experience suffering,
Yeah.
and we all have that inner space where we can choose how we respond.
It makes me think about those times in my own life
Yeah.
where I felt lost or overwhelmed. Maybe I didn't have the tools or the awareness to
Right.
make a conscious choice about how to react.
But knowing that I have that inner space,
Yeah.
that freedom within me,
Right.
even when things are tough, is really empowering.
It is.
And that's what's so inspiring about Frankl's work.
Right?
It's not just about surviving horrific experiences.
Yeah.
It's about how we choose to live, how we find meaning,
What-
and how we cultivate that inner strength no matter what life throws at us.
But what about that feeling of emptiness?
Yeah.
The existential vacuum that Frankl talks about.
Mm-hmm.
He saw it in the camps,
Right.
but he also saw it in modern society.
That's right.
How does that fit in with all this?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's a crucial part of Frankl's message.
Okay.
He believed that the existential vacuum is a challenge we all face, whether we've been through trauma or not.
Right.
It's that feeling of meaninglessness that
Yeah.
can creep in when we lose sight of what truly matters.
So in a way, it's like a different kind of suffering, a modern kind of suffering.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where his ideas about finding meaning are even more important today.
Exactly. Let's explore that a bit further.
Okay.
I think you'll find it's incredibly relevant to how we navigate the complexities of modern life.
So we've talked about, finding meaning in the face of suffering.
Right.
But what about this existential vacuum idea? Is that something we're all susceptible to?
Absolutely.
Even if our lives are, pretty good on the surface.
That's exactly what Frankl observed.
Okay.
He saw people who had, achieved success, material wealth,
Right.
all the things that society tells us should make us happy.
Right.
And yet they still felt this emptiness.
Yeah.
This lack of purpose.
It's almost like the more we have, the less we know what to do with it.
It is in a way.
I've definitely felt that.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I've got the job, the house, the stuff. Now what?
It's like we've lost those traditional sources of meaning, religion, strong community ties, even the struggle for survival that used to give life a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
Now we're comfortable, safe, and kind of adrift.
And we try to fill that void with distractions.
Right.
Binge watching, shopping, social media.
It's constant.
It's like we're constantly trying to escape that feeling.
Yeah, but those are just temporary fixes.
Exactly.
They don't address the root cause, that lack of meaning,
Right.
that disconnect from something bigger.
So how do we deal with this?
It's a good question.
It sounds like Frankl isn't offering any quick fixes or easy answers.
And that's what I appreciate about his work.
Yeah.
He's not giving us a step-by-step guide to happiness.
Right.
Instead, he's challenging us to take responsibility for creating meaning in our own lives.
And that's where these ideas of self-transcendence and responsibility come full circle, right?
Absolutely.
It's about finding something beyond our own needs and desires.
Yeah.
Something we can dedicate ourselves to.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be this huge world-changing thing.
Right.
It could be our work, our relationships, a creative pursuit, even just committing to living ethically,
Right.
helping others.
So it's about finding what gives our lives purpose and just going all in.
That's where the rubber meets the road.
Right.
It's not enough to just read Frankl and think, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
We have to actually put these ideas into action.
He did that with his own patients, right?
Yes, he did.
People struggling with, depression, anxiety, that feeling of meaninglessness.
He encouraged them to find meaningful activities.
Okay.
Volunteering, creative expression.
Right.
Anything that connected them to something larger than themselves.
And he saw that even if their external circumstances didn't change much,
Right.
their internal experience shifted dramatically.
It's powerful.
They felt more purpose, more joy, more resilience.
Exactly.
So it's like we're not just waiting around for meaning to find us.
Right.
We have to actively seek it out, make it a part of our everyday lives.
That's the empowering part of
Yeah.
Frankl's message.
Yeah.
We're not just victims of our circumstances.
The power.
We have the power to choose our attitude, to find meaning,
Right.
to shape our own destinies.
Well, that's an inspiring note to end on.
It is.
This deep dive into man's search for meaning has been pretty intense.
Yeah, it has.
But also incredibly insightful. It's given me a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Not just in terms of, Frankl's experiences,
Right.
but also how his ideas apply to my own life.
I think it's the beauty of his work.
Yeah.
It stays with you, challenges you,
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately empowers you to live a more meaningful life no matter what.
It makes you wonder, what are the full granaries of your past?
Yeah,
And what new harvest are you working towards?
that's a good question.
Food for thought, right?
It's,
Until next time, deep divers,
yeah.
keep searching, keep exploring,
Mhm.
and keep creating meaning in your own unique ways.